let's suppose we're on Capitol Hill, and let's suppose, just for argument's sake, that you're a Dem and you're a Republican. Which way would you vote right now?
I would
shell-shocked by that.
I would. I'm shell-shocked that I would be either Democrat or Republican. I would vote no. I would have voted no in the beginning with Mr. Bernanke. Mr. Bernanke has never been right about anything in the last 6 years that he's been in Washington.
So there's nothing he's done, nothing he could do to redeem himself ahead of this vote this week. But
he could resign.
He's not going to do that.
He could abolish the Federal Reserve. Then I'd vote for him, yes. But he's one of the major reasons we have this problem.
Very much.
They were printing so much money. They were reducing interest rates to an absurd level. He caused the problem. He didn't see it coming. He doesn't know how to solve the problem. He's going to make it worse. The only good thing about Mr. Bernanke being reappointed is at least he will be around when it gets worse, and then everybody will know the reason for the problem.
Is there something about the appointment of Fed chiefs, perhaps, that the people who get to participate in the confirmation process, they just don't understand what's at stake? In recent history, if he doesn't get the nod, this will be the first time. The toughest vote we've seen was 1983, and it was Volcker, and even then there was only 16 versus overwhelming yeas. Do the people in D.C. just have no idea who's in front of them and what he's charged with, what they're supposed to be doing? Sounds like they don't even have a job description laid out.
What do you mean, do they have a clue? Of course they don't have a clue. I mean, why do you think they're in Congress?
I know.
Why do you think they're in politics, for goodness sake? No, they don't know what's going on. And Mr. Obama doesn't know what's going on. That's why we have these people who don't know how to run an economy.
We'd be thrown under the bus.
Term 2 for Bernanke, as soon as it goes through, would be different, though, right? I mean, he'll be humble. He's eaten a certain degree of humble pie.
What?
I don't think that's necessarily the case.
You think he's on Virgin Galactic instead of a helicopter now?
Bernie, he went to an Ivy League university. He was an Ivy League professor.
Oh, my God.
He's not humble. What are you talking about? He thinks he's smarter than the rest of us. He's not.
Oh, my goodness. You don't like the Fed. You think the Fed should be dismantled. What about the BOJ? Are you a fan?
They all should be dismantled. I mean, the world has gotten along without central banks for centuries, including in the U.S. We've had 3 central banks in the U.S. The first 2 disappeared. This one's going to disappear, too. The world would be better off without central banks.
What replaces them?
The market. You and me, all of us, everybody watching this show.
That's exactly
and there'll certainly be problems. There'll be
Mr. Obama would never stand for that, though.
Of course not. But look what the Federal Reserve is doing. It's taking on gigantic debts, which somebody has to pay off. They're printing gigantic amounts of money, which is going to cause problems down the road. At least if we didn't have a central bank, we wouldn't have all this debt being created, and we wouldn't have all this money being printed. And likewise in Japan. Kirby's exactly right. This Bank of Japan has printed huge amounts of money for 20 years now.
Is this a new revelation? You sound like you're getting more extreme as you start to grow up.
I find it extreme that we have central banks. As I said, for centuries we haven't had central banks. America's had 3. The first 2 failed. The extreme is to have a central bank, if you ask me. Curry's right. It's not going to disappear anytime soon. But mark my words, between Greenspan and Bernanke, they're ruining the central bank system in America, and it's going to disappear.
You're not obviously a fan of the activist approach that the administration has been taking. That's one industry after another. It's one initiative after another. It was kind of funny, but you know, the day the Dems lost a very key by-election last week in Massachusetts, I mean, you could see the look on their faces. They had this dark gray pallor which came over them. The next thing you knew, okay, we're going to really crunch the vice on the banks now. I mean, it's full steam ahead.
Well, that's one of the reasons they lost the election, because everybody's furious that the amount of debt that's been taking place, the bailouts that have been taking place, that haven't worked, that will not work. They're making the same mistakes that Japan made in the 1990s. They're propping up all the zombie companies and zombie banks, and it's not working. Everybody knows it's not working, except the people in Washington.